Nuclear war would forever split human history into anything that happened before and the post-war apocalypse. In the worst case, mass fires consume everything within tens of thousands of square kilometers, killing hundreds of millions within hours. But the worst part comes after that. Nuclear war could trigger a nuclear winter that might kill billions.
The problem with the nuclear war is if it happens, like the one that happened in Hiroshima, it ended up like covering up the sun, and that's the problem. Because if the sun is covered down, the basic necessity of surviving as a human being will be limited in the air. As you know it, death is inevitable at the same time.
Maybe even completely collapsing our civilization. How does it work? And what would it look like? Fire causes winter. When a nuclear weapon is detonated, a bubble of gas hotter than the sun is forced into existence, so hot.
Do you know, guys, how crazy it is? Like, they are able to make something so hot as the sun just from creating out in the lab or something,
that everything within kilometers immediately begins to burn.
And the way they recently bombed the planes for Russia and stuff like that, these are things that will actually lead to a Cold War. If not a Cold War, then a World War III might even erupt. The way Germany are now weaponizing themselves and stuff like that.
The terror bubble expands rapidly, filling the sky over its target, creating a devastating shockwave that causes most of the immediate destruction. Basically, you break a lot of stuff and set it on fire. And in the worst case, this turns into a firestorm that consumes everything and everyone on the ground.
Damn.
Right after the explosion, a gigantic mushroom cloud rises over the destruction like a demon throning over its perverse work. But in the following hours, a far more deadly cloud forms. The fire burning cities, forests or fields heats up so much air that it creates its own microclimate and wind system. Hot air and hot smoke rise, pulling in fresh air from the surroundings and fresh oxygen, stoking the flames even more. This creates an
So it's like the fire continues to create itself as it goes, because it just continues to grow due because of you see, fire needs oxygen, so the oxygen just damn, that's science, bro.
Draft and forms a colossal pyrocumulonimbus cloud that carries the soot and aerosols from the flames high into the stratosphere. Under normal conditions, the soot rising from a big fire is quickly washed out by rain. But a pyrocumulonimbus cloud can reach altitudes well above the height where rain clouds form. Once above the tropopause, there's simply no weather to remove soot from the atmosphere, so it can stay aloft for years. If this happens to a single city, it's a tragedy, but a fairly local one. But in a full-scale nuclear war, warring nations following the cold logic of mutually assured destruction could use hundreds or even thousands of nuclear weapons all at once, creating hundreds of firestorms, sending up to 150 million tons of soot, a cube the size of a skyscraper, directly into the stratosphere. In the next...
So, will it be visible like from space? Will it be visible? And if they do that, then I think in general they will change how the atmosphere actually responds. I still wonder up to this day how Hiroshima and Nagasaki
next few days and weeks, the soot begins to blanket the earth at high altitudes, absorbing light high above the ground and preventing sunlight from reaching the surface.
Damn.
This is not like science fiction where the sky turns dark and the sun disappears. Winter is what happens when just a little less sunlight hits the ground, and now suddenly a lot less sunlight gets through. Yesterday, the world was normal. Today, nuclear winter begins. Winter causes hunger. How bad nuclear winter would be is still an active area of research. It all hinges on one thing: how much stuff will burn really hot? How many firestorms will be caused by the heat of the explosions? This depends on many factors, from the materials a city is made of, to the time of the year, if a forest is nearby, and so on. So just keep in mind we're working with some assumptions. Here's the good news. Nuclear winter is not permanent, and definitely no new ice age. The effects on the climate only last as long as the soot remains in the atmosphere, which...
Bro, for 6 years it's just winter. How are you going to survive that?
is at most a decade or so until it clears out and temperatures normalize. The
10 years to clear, bro. Yo. So for 10 years, you'll not see the sun. You'll not see anything. It will just be winter, winter, winter throughout the years until you grow old.
bad news is that this causes almost immediate climate change within a few weeks. It disrupts our climate system faster than any living being can adapt to. In this new climate, our seasons are suddenly all wrong. Winters are much longer, summers shorter and colder, or gone altogether. This also means less evaporation over the oceans, which means less rain and maybe large-scale droughts. This is bad because our food eats the sun. Without good summers and enough rain, growing seasons shrink or even collapse. The majority of humanity lives in an area called the mid-latitudes, a strip of land that has the ideal temperature for our species, not just because it's not too hot or cold, it's also where the plants we eat grow best. The vast majority of the food we eat stems from a few highly efficient crops that are mostly produced in a few very agriculturally productive regions like the US Great Plains or Ukraine. From these bread and rice baskets of the world, they get traded and shipped around the world. In the worst case of a full-scale nuclear war, the temperatures in the mid-latitudes will probably stay below freezing for several years. Nothing at all can grow under these conditions, and the world's bread baskets would suddenly turn empty. If food production crashes...
You see, the problem is, if you guys have been watching these movies where an apocalyptic thing is happening, the way people rush to the stores to store themselves, to steal everything, it's gonna be wild, bro. Wild. But I don't think it will be of any use because it's a nuclear war. If you survive, it's a miracle, honestly.
The world's food producers would very likely ramp up prices or even stop selling food to other countries, if they're still able to farm their fields at all. It's easy to calculate how many people can be alive on Earth. You take all the calories we can produce and divide them by what the average person needs to survive. If you have more people than calories, then within a few weeks, you don't anymore. Humanity has only a few weeks' supply of crops and food, not enough to survive this drastic drop in production. But the climate is not the only issue.
But don't you think if these people know this is such an effect that will take place if it ever happens, are they coming up with initiatives? Yeah? Are they coming up with initiatives that they're going to use in order to try and survive the situation? What do you guys think? I think that's the best way to tackle
Unindustrialized agriculture is a complex affair that relies on functioning supply chains to provide unthinkable amounts of industrially produced fertilizer and chemicals to kill weeds and vermin. Massive numbers of specialized modern machinery is plowing, sowing, harvesting, and distributing. After a nuclear war, especially if the countries that produce the food were part of the nuclear exchange, there may simply be no more fuel, fertilizer, or machine parts because there are no more oil refineries, ports, and other essential infrastructure left, damaging global food production even more. Okay, so now that we've set the stage, let's look at what science says about the actual wars that could happen. Actual nuclear war.
Russia being attacked by Ukraine.
Today, there are two main conflicts that scientists think about when making calculations of nuclear winter: a nuclear war between India and Pakistan, and one between the US and Russia.
Wait. What do you mean a nuclear war between India and Pakistan? Do they even have like nuclear weapons? They do. Damn. Hey, that's okay. That's new.
The most likely smallish nuclear...
No, the most likely scenario, I think, for me, I would say right now we are in that state because Ukraine attacked Russia. Speculations say they were targeting Putin, but they didn't manage to get him. So I feel like that's where the speculations can be. So it will be that, and then if Ukraine is attacked by Russia, then the countries that are supporting Ukraine now enter the full blown. So that's the scenario for me. That's the thing I think that would happen.
Nuclear exchange would be fought today between India and Pakistan with relatively low-yield weapons. Even in a pretty mild nuclear war like this, the immediate explosions would kill around 27 million people, which is horrible.
Damn, 27 million.
Well enough. In just a few hours, more
Bro, how many people are there in the world? 27 million is like half the population, or nearly. Okay, not half, but a quarter.
people would die than in all of World War I. The ensuing fires would not cause a nuclear winter, but a mild nuclear autumn. But even this would disrupt the climate and thereby global agriculture, enough to starve up to 250 million people worldwide. Unfortunately, India and Pakistan are in an arms race and have been increasing the number and power of warheads in their arsenal. The next stage of escalation would be war with hundreds of nuclear weapons, the bombs and fires destroying many major population centres and killing over 100 million people. A war on this scale would cause a nuclear winter that would damage global agriculture enough to cut the available calories for humanity in half. The number of people that starve to death would be as high as 2 billion. 1 in 4
Bro, people will start even eating themselves and killing each other for food.
humans alive today. The worst case scenario is a full-scale global war between NATO nations and Russia, or China, which also continues to build its nuclear arsenal. In a war between a former, future and current superpower, thousands of nuclear weapons could be detonated. In a scenario with around 4,400 nuclear weapons, 360 million people would perish right away. We have no other
360 million. Yo.
event to even compare the death and destruction to.
And the funny thing is, Mr. Beast has like 400 million subscribers.
It's like humanity
nearly-
dropping an asteroid on itself. The nuclear winter that follows such an apocalyptic war would tank human calorie production by as much as 90%. Not only would almost all of our agriculture take an immediate and deadly hit, the climate would take at least a decade to recover. Because a war like this would specifically hit the world regions that produce most of the food for humanity, recovery will be much, much harder than with other conflicts. Within 2 years, the global death toll from starvation could rise to about 5 billion. In mid-latitude countries like Russia,
5 billion.
China, Canada, the US and much of Europe, only a few % of the population might survive. Humanity will never be the same again. While nowhere is truly safe, some nations in the southern hemisphere may fare well enough to endure, while the rest of the world collapses. All the nuclear weapon states are in the northern hemisphere, so a few countries like Australia, New Zealand and Argentina may be able
But you see, the problem is, even if you're like, the problem with this is, even if you're down there, the thing is, if you're affiliated with the country that is fighting, then obviously the enemies are going to attack the stronghold also. So I don't think you're safe anywhere. As long as your country is associating with the country that is fighting, I don't think
to
you're safe.
endure for a bunch of different reasons. Their nuclear winter would be milder, they have a lot of livestock that would not be as affected as crops, so they would probably stop exporting food and focus on keeping their own people alive, assuming they aren't invaded for their food by other starving nations. It's safe to say that the world would become extremely unpleasant for a long time, and it's impossible to know how many people would have died when the nuclear winter ends. In the worst case, human civilization could collapse and the survivors would be thrown back thousands of years, slowly trying to recover a world full of scars and graves. Eventually, when they've rebuilt civilization, would they ever build nuclear weapons again?
Obviously. And you know, the funny thing is, people will still build nuclear weapons even after knowing the devastation. Because take an example of World War II. World War II, after World War II, these people knew the effects and the whole of using nuclear weapons, and they're still building them to now. Now I feel like they are, like, literally a lot of the countries are nuclear weapon they do have, so it's an inevitable situation. I don't know why people even do that.
We know for sure that we need to do anything we can to make sure nuclear war never happens. This video was supported by Open Philanthropy.
Okay. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe. Let's get right into another